Hi, and welcome to Two Souls Podcast, Episode 2. I'm one of your hosts, George O'Mara, joined by my co-host, Mark O'Mara. How you doing today?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm all ready.
You ready?
This time. Not that I wasn't ready before, but I'm more ready.
You're all armored up.
Yeah.
You're all ready to go. We got a great show for you guys. We got some news. Got you on the game section. We'll be talking about a little game called Lords of the Fallen. Pretty excited about that. Yeah, and then, we'll close up with a little what we've been up to. So, we shall start with the news.
Yes.
So, you've been working on our socials. You want to let our audience know what's up with that?
Yes. So, first bit of news. We have all our socials up now. You can follow us on Twitter for updates. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok for clips of our show. And all of these socials are at Two Souls Podcast. So you can follow us on all of these at Two Souls Podcast.
See, now, I was playing around with these new social accounts, and I realized that you can also share these things. You can share them to your own followers.
Yes.
You can let people see what you've been into.
Sorry.
So go ahead and go give it a share. Go let some of your followers know what you follow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We sure appreciate it. So we're going to start off the news with a little FYI. I actually learned this today. I've been greatly frustrated with this with my PS5 recently because, as you know, I have a couple controllers. I swap them while I'm charging, so that way I've always got one that's fully charged. This little thing will happen sometimes where I'll connect it, and then it doesn't charge. Well, my lovely co-host here actually revealed to me that apparently if you put it to charge after your PS5's been in rest mode for 3 hours, it doesn't charge.
Yeah, when your PS5 goes into rest mode, it charges for the first 3 hours of rest, and then it'll shut off the charging. And I think it also charges with, less voltage or whatever, less power going through while it's on rest mode. So I turned all that off. So my PS5, it doesn't auto rest or anything anymore, because I noticed that affecting downloads too. And I don't know if that's just my internet or what. I don't think it is, because yours works fine. We're on the same internet. But yeah, my PS5 will go into rest mode, and then it would stop downloads and stuff. It was obnoxious.
Well, charging was obnoxious, but now I know.
But now it works.
Now it works.
And that's just a thing for you guys to know. If you're trying to charge your controller, you got 3 hours in rest mode.
Yeah, so it's an interesting bit of news. It's more of an FYI than news, but it's still news to those who don't know.
It's in there, yeah.
So that's why I added it. So you want to take this next one?
Yeah, next on our news, Best Buy to end DVD Blu-ray disc sales in 2024. To my knowledge, is it just DVDs and stuff? I thought it was all physical media.
I saw that it was just DVD and Blu-ray discs.
Okay, well, for sure DVD and Blu-ray discs. After decades of selling these things, they're no longer going to be selling them. You can continue to purchase them through to the end of 2023, and you can still get DVDs from Walmart, Amazon, and Target. So if you like collecting all these things, you can still do that.
Streamers, huh? Streaming.
I want to say they said the reason why was to they're not getting a lot of sales for that, and then also they wanted to free up space, which I actually worked at Best Buy for a little bit, and dude, it's some of the stores. It's because of COVID. Some of the stores, they literally just use them as they function as storefronts and stuff like that, but they're on the back end kind of using them more as warehouses. And so the store I worked at was like that, and dude, we would have pallets full of DVDs, just boxes of DVDs and crap like that, and we'd have to store them on the floor, in the store, and it was pretty nuts. So I get why they're doing that, even from that level. So it's just interesting, but
I mean, I don't really know anyone that buys DVDs or Blu-rays anymore.
No.
Most people are just streaming.
Yeah, I mean, you can stream up to 4K a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You can stream HD and all that, so it's
yeah. Well, hey, I mean, it's a new age, I guess. Everything's on stream, huh?
It's all digital now.
Moving on with our news. Redfall. This is Arcane Studios' vampire, team-based, looter shooter. Am I missing any other
Vampire.
descriptors?
Did you
There's
say
vampires?
vampire? Vampires.
Yeah, well, let's just say that it's not doing too well. Not a lot of vampires playing this one. Player count is really low. So it's at the lowest concurrent player count on Steam, and it's been less than a full team at times at its lowest point. So the count actually went as low as 3 people playing it, and at its peak, it was at 38, and this was all over the last week.
It's so sad, dude.
It's sad, but
This game had a horrible release, dude.
it was from what we understand, a very troubled development cycle. Not very smooth. A lot of consternation.
I believe it was rushed.
It was rushed,
Also.
and it was the first game that Arcane Studios was putting in Games Pass.
Yes.
And it was going straight to Games Pass, and that's a whole different kind of business model. So
Yes.
word around the street was they were feeling the pressure from that. So, our thoughts go out to the team. We hope that they're able to learn as much as they can from that, because Arcane Studios is a very talented group of people.
Yeah.
But
For those of you who don't know, Arcane's done the Dishonored games.
Yes.
They also did, I believe it was 2017, Prey.
and let's not forget Deathloop.
And Deathloop, yes.
It was an alright game. It was a little overhyped, in my opinion.
I think it was overrated.
It was overrated.
Literally, the ratings it got, I think, were way too
I think it was a little bit of both. It was a little too much. Everyone was very...
It was a fun game.
There's stuff that was cool, but overall it was... I think Dishonored is their shining achievement so far still.
You gotta play Prey, dude.
Prey, I still have to play that yet.
I think...
Was that Arcane? Are you sure?
I'm 90% sure, yeah.
Let me just check for you here real quick.
Check the year, too.
Prey...
But yeah,
Arcane.
Dishonored is, really good. And then Prey...
Yes.
That was also Arcane, correct?
2017.
Yeah. That game's fantastic also. Deathloop, a little overrated.
Yeah, Prey I still haven't gotten
And then Redfall was just kind of there was wrenches thrown into the machine from what it sounded like.
I don't know. I do get why they wanted to do something that was team-based. Kind of, sort of, because it's kind of popping. Everyone's trying to do some sort of multiplayer integration and get your friends to play with you kind of thing. Probably to also increase the longevity of the game on Games Pass, to get people to keep playing it. But in a much more real sense, I don't understand why Arcane Studios decided to make this game. And I think that it doesn't play too much of their strengths, and I think it obfuscates a lot of the design things that they're really good at. Like simulation and like story-driven narrative.
It's the whole immersive sim aspect.
This whole open world. I understand the world isn't that big. It's a smaller, more contained open world, but it's still an open world. And then you get these fetch quests, and you get these they're like check marks on the map, and so.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense too. After not Redfall. That's what we're talking about. I think it makes sense after Deathloop, because Deathloop was also
it was
leap.
yeah.
It was
yeah.
also a leap for what
It's
they're
true.
what their strengths are. I feel.
But that was more in the direction that
I think that was definitely more in line with their
yeah.
strengths than Redfall, because Redfall's it's team based, horde based kind of shooter in an open world. It's like Left 4 Dead open world kind of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sad how that released, and I guess it's not working out too well either.
I guess if you want to see it continue on, and would it be Games Pass?
Yeah. If you want to add to the player count.
All right.
Next here,
This is good.
Liza
news.
P has sold over 1 million, counted 1 million copies. Now, if you've stuck with us this long, you'll realize we actually talked about this last week.
Yeah, this is our first.
This is episode number 1.
Yeah.
So go check that out if you want to hear our takes on that. But yeah, it sold over 1 million copies. They tweeted. This is from NeoWiz, right? Was it from their account?
This is from
the devs Twitter account. They said, "We would like to express our sincere gratitude to all the citizens of Krat. Thank you to everyone who helped us and accompanied us, and we hope you join in our future journeys as well."
Ooh,
Hashtag Liza P.
future journeys,
So yeah, I'm definitely gonna follow them on whatever they do next. We mentioned it last time that there's been rumors that they might be doing this with other. It's more conjecture, really, that they might be doing this with other stories. So that'd be tight. People have been mentioning.
What isn't conjecture though, and what is actually from the dev's mouth is that they're working on DLC.
Oh,
So this will get expanded. I think
Good.
they're talking about this
Yeah, that's
future
dope.
journeys here. So congrats to the team.
Yep.
And great game, stellar product, really cool world. On to the next. So Starfield, talked about this in our last episode as well. You know, Liza P was episode 0. Actually, I'm realizing it's episode 0, correct?
No, it was 1.
No, it was 0, and then Starfield was 1. So
Oh,
Starfield,
yes, you're right.
talked about it this last week here. So their lead quest designer, they left Bethesda to join other RPG veterans making a new open world game. So this new studio is going to be called Something Wicked Games, and they've been working on a Lovecraftian open world RPG game. And they got people from former BioWare, Bethesda, and Obsidian working on this.
Damn.
So the lead quest designer from Starfield, Will Shen, he was the lead quest designer and then got promoted to design director for Starfield. He's been working at Bethesda since Fallout 3. And, you know, he's going to be helping to bridge the gap between the narrative and design teams over at Something Wild or Something Wicked Games. I have to get used to that.
Yeah, it's an interesting name for a studio.
It's a wicked name. Their debut game will be a Lovecraftian horror RPG with real-world myths and historical horrors.
Sounds tight.
Yeah, I'm
I
down for that.
didn't realize like the developers that are like joining it, like from what studios they're from, because that's pretty stacked, dude.
Yeah, they got some
BioWare,
good people.
Bethesda, and Obsidian,
I'm hoping it's like old school BioWare too, like
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect BioWare and all of that. You know, Jade Empire,
Yeah.
that kind of old school team. You know.
Yeah, dude, I guess we'll see. I'm sure more information will come out, you know, in the coming months, year.
Yeah, we'll keep you all updated as we find out.
Next on our news, speaking of Bethesda, Pete Hines is actually retiring. So, you know, we'll wish him the best. It's going to be interesting without that guy.
Yeah. I mean, hey,
He's been there in like so many different videos I've seen that guy in, dude.
Hines has been a major player. He's been there for a long time at Bethesda, you know, GameWorks, Game Studios. Game Studios, right? I don't know what to say, GameWorks. We wish him the best. From what I understand, he wants to move on to some other kinds of projects, something more personal. You know, that's great. You know, I got the hint that, I don't know, maybe he wasn't too hot on the next news topic we're talking about. He always seemed like he was kind of wanting the games to be for everyone, you know, but keeping that in mind, you know, the next bit of news we have here is that Activision Blizzard joins Xbox. And so Xbox is just, they're just owning this whole developer sphere now. Like, I saw like a breakdown of all of the development studios that Xbox owns versus PlayStation. Xbox owns like 3 times that, including Bethesda, where Pete Hines just retired from. And a lot of this was a thing that was happening between the FTC and, you know, Xbox and Activision Blizzard for about a year. For about a year, they were investigating this and making sure that it was all on the up and up. It wasn't a monopoly, as we would say, you know, in the business world, you know. But it's official now. You know, Xbox News says, quote, "We love gaming. We play games, create games, and know firsthand how much gaming means to all of us as individuals and collectively as a community. And today, we officially welcome Activision Blizzard and their teams to Xbox. They are the publishers of some of the most played and most beloved franchises in gaming history across console, PC, and mobile. From Pitfall to Call of Duty, World of Warcraft to Overwatch, Candy Crush to Farm Hero Saga, their studios have pushed the boundaries of gaming for players around the world." I don't know about that Farm Hero Saga. I haven't really. It sounds a little superfluous.
I'm like, I know Candy Crush and like Farm Hero.
Candy Crush, I mean, you got a lot of sagas on mobile, I see, you know, but Call of Duty, you know, I mean, that's a big deal, you know.
Farm Hero Saga, what is this? Oh wow, it looks like Candy Crush.
For fans of Candy Crush Saga, Farm Hero Saga.
It looks like Candy Crush, but you're like moving fruits to feed animals.
I mean, you know, that's probably made Activision Blizzard quite a bit of money.
Its initial release date was March 7th, 2013, so you guys know.
Wow. Congrats to the studio that made that as well. You know, 10 years under their belt, that's That's pretty great. you
Damn,
know?
dude, that is
It's been
10
quite,
years old.
quite the harvest.
When did Candy Crush come out?
Oh, dude, that was like 2010, 2011, I'm guessing.
Like, I don't know why for some stupid 12.
12. I was off.
I don't know for some stupid reason. Like I've always had it in my head. Like that's still kind of a new thing. But I'm
Candy
like, it has
Crush?
been like a decade.
Bruh. Candy Crush has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And it'll probably be around for a while longer, you know?
Yeah.
So Activision Blizzard games apparently are not coming to Games Pass until 2024. So for those of you who have Games Pass and are looking forward to playing these games,
You're gonna have to wait.
you're gonna have to wait. Sorry, or go buy it. You know, go buy it now and just
If you can't wait, just go buy it.
patience is a good thing, though.
And speaking of Activision,
Yes.
there's gonna be changing of the guard in one aspect. CEO Bobby Kotick is leaving Activision at the end of 2023, and that's that's basically it for the news.
I mean, hey, you know what? About time. About time. We hope it's a safer place to work now, without Kotick haunting the halls.
Oh boy. Yeah.
And with that, we shall move on
Yes.
to On the Games. Hey, we're on the games now.
On the games now.
That's pretty exciting. We made it.
I felt it again.
I felt every
It's
single
like
time.
it's like a shift.
You get in the games, the air starts to move a little
Yeah.
differently. The winds.
Yeah.
We got a game called Lords of the Fallen to talk to you about. There's a lot of these Soulsborns coming out. A lot of Soulsborns, guys. If you're a friend of Soulsborns, whew, gird yourselves because you got a lot to go through. And we have been with Lords of the Fallen.
Yes.
So this is made by Hexworks Game Studio. And let's just jump into it, shall we? So do you want to give our listeners a little synopsis of what this game's about?
So
You're like, so a deer, he's it was from the first game, and you have to understand the
no, so because that's one thing I think is a point to mention. Lords of the Fallen, if that sounds familiar to any one of you, it's probably because this game, the first game, because that's the thing. This one's actually called The Lords of the Fallen. The first one came out in like 2014,
It is?
I think.
I think it's just Lords of the Fallen, dude.
No, this one's The Lords of the Fallen because I remember noticing that recently.
No, it's just Lords of the Fallen.
Is it?
Wait, hold on. Yes.
It's just Lords of the Fallen or The Lords of the Fallen? Because I'm pretty sure it's The Lords of the Fallen. The first one was Lords of the Fallen.
Is it the, or is it just
The point being, okay, is
just Lords of the Fallen.
this is like a spiritual successor is what they announced it as, and then as time goes on, you kind of realize like, oh, it's actually just like a sequel. It's not necessarily a direct sequel, but it is a sequel. But I think they named it the same thing because they're trying to like kind of have a clean slate to do what they wanted to do here. Because Lords of the Fallen 2014, it was 2014, right? The old one, 2014, the first one. That one came out and did, to my knowledge, like pretty bad, and
Yeah,
not a lot.
pretty
It
mixed
was
reception.
pretty mixed reception, but it didn't. The memory people had of it was it not really like meeting up to expectations, and then they announced this one, and it actually looked like it was aiming to kind of like rectify a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like artistically and aesthetically, from what they showed on the trailers, it looked like very dark, a lot more brutal, and like really detailed. And the more gameplay I saw, I started realizing, I'm like, dude, this is like there's a lot of things in the game that are like either kind of directly ripped from in terms of concept, or like not in concept, but in terms of aesthetic, or they're like very similar to stuff from like Berserk.
Yeah.
If you know Berserk, it's like a Japanese comic.
Yes.
Also really dark, like medieval kind of fantasy.
So you got grimdark, I think is the word they use.
Yeah,
Grimdark
it's
fantasy.
it's really really like grim and really dark.
Yeah. Cool, man, I can barely see anything. And
But needless to say, out of all of the
pretty grim.
yeah, out of all of the Soulsborns and stuff that have been announced and all that, like Lies of P and Lords of the Fallen happened to like get announced around the same time, happened to have like release dates that were roughly around the same kind of ballpark.
Yeah, it's like a month apart.
Yeah, and they both did look promising. So, going to Lies of P, we already talked about that one, and then this one was the next one. And in terms of world design and aesthetic and all of that stuff, like it's really impressive, honestly. Like I really like the art design. I really like, there's a lot of vistas that they have just like on the side of little cliffs that you're walking, and they're like really, really impressive. A lot of the environments you're walking through are really impressive. Also, they're just they do what they set out to do. In terms of like you walk in, you're like in like a foresty area, and it's actually like a really cool looking foresty area. And I think that's really the main thing that they nailed, because as we kept playing, music, that's something I noticed when we went back, because we were watching some videos for the original one just to kind of compare it. The music is like pretty similar to the first game.
Yeah, like art direction and the music, particularly the art design, is definitely the strongest part of the game.
The new one.
Of Lords of the Fallen 2023. That's the one that we're speaking to. And yeah, like I'm in the same boat as you. That was a big reason why I even kept playing it. Because I'm like, what am I going to see next? Which is a big, let's face it, that is a big part of these games. If you talk about the loop of like, hitting some sort of challenge, overcoming challenge, you get the feeling of, satisfaction and like accomplishment because you like overcame something that was difficult. And then you also get rewarded with whatever little upgrades and all that, but like what you get to see next. And like this was doing pretty well with that. And yeah, I mean, just their art design team was on it, from like the weapons and the enemies and all the environments in particular, and like just some of the boss designs, really cool.
Some of just the concept of them too.
Yeah.
Like there's one they showed in the trailer where it's like a night and it becomes like some other thing.
Yeah.
Like that, like those concepts are like super tight.
Yeah, like that Spurned Progeny. Like it was Spurned Bunda. Because he kept doing that. He has an attack, to get ahead of ourselves here, he has an attack where he sits on you and he's this huge thing.
He lifts a foot and then just like falls down on you.
Yeah. So his Bunda is on you. But yeah, I mean, like, it's very grotesque,
But it's
like,
really cool too.
Very cool.
Yeah.
There was like an elegance to a lot of the design, a lot of the areas, but mainly and particularly visually speaking, because that's where we both started. Like I started, and I think a good way to get into this is, for those of you who play like Soulsborne games, there's like the souls you get like when you kill someone. It's like your currency, your level up XP, all of that. It's kind of it hits all of those different like criteria for your currency, and usually when you die, the mechanic is you have to go run back because you lose it when you die. Go back to the spot you died at, recollect them, like reclaim what you lost, and if you die on the way there, then you lose them forever, and you just gotta like
they're like resets.
Exactly.
Now you gotta go pick up your 0 souls.
So yeah, yeah. Well, so there's, and this is kind of I think the best place to kind of start talking about, because it's very particular kind of design decisions they made that I think added up to an experience that made it okay, to play. It was okay. It wasn't like it's like okay, almost good, in my opinion, because like it's not quite good. It's definitely not great. It's definitely not astounding.
It's really cool to look at.
So
for a lot of it,
so you lose
it's fun enough for a while.
Yes. So you lose your in this game it's called vigor. Okay, and so you lose your vigor, and you're like, all right, I gotta go run to go pick this up. All right, and you're like. You got this little lamp, you're a lamp bearer, there's a whole dual world mechanic to this. So you've got your land of the living, you got your land of the dead, and you can use this lamp to kind of see through it. So you die and you go to pick up your vigor, okay? And the animation, bro, for picking this up, dude, is you pull out your lamp, it's kind of checking around, it starts sucking up the vigor. Okay.
Your vigor.
And it takes.
I hardly knew her.
It takes like a solid 2 to 3 seconds. Meanwhile, your guys is kind of walking around all slowly. Dude, God forbid, okay, you go to try to pick that up in the middle of a boss fight or something like on return, because you're just gonna get like smacked. So that was the first thing I encountered where I'm like, okay, I don't really like that. That seems kind of annoying. Okay, then you start getting into like other things where it's like some of the controls are just like, to me, I think they're like, okay, that could have been a little more elegant. The way that the character moves
The
around.
number one thing I could say in controls, you sprint with your thumbstick, which is like whatever. That is
Yeah.
what it is. It's you don't have to claw, so that's fine.
Yeah, that's nice.
Okay. They have the jump button. Okay. They have the jump button on A if you're on Xbox, or X if you're on PlayStation. It's like your main button. And that's also your interact button. So you'll be like sprinting up to like a ladder.
You're like running away from enemies.
You're running away from enemies and you're like, I need to climb this ladder.
You'll get your
fast.
vigor.
Yeah, okay. and you get to the ladder, and instead of like running up to it, getting on it, and climbing real quick, your guy will like jump into the wall because you're like still sprinting.
Yeah.
And I just think or like even just picking up items, dude. Like there's times where there's no enemies, and like just picking up an item that I sprinted to was like obnoxious as hell. Because I'm like, I sprint up to it, and then I have to like either like remember and like let go of the thumbstick for a second, wait till he like goes to idle frame so he's not sprinting, then pick it up, or I've got to like jump into the wall past it, and then like it's just, I think that was like such a stupid choice for like the control.
Yeah, and it's like, for me, I'm like, obviously you guys put a lot of thought into this, but at these like decision making points, you're like, okay, well, let's have the animation for like reclaiming your points be like 2-3 seconds. Your guy walks slower and all. I'm like, what was the thought process behind that one? See, because like that's something that you have to do frequently in these kind of games. And I get like, oh yeah, we wanted you to wait for like an opening, or we wanted you to be a little more tactical. I'm like, but that's not what it feels like. Like what it ends up feeling like is clunky. And that's kind of the feeling that I got from a lot of things with this game. So, you've got like your parrying, and you've got your dodge and your guarding and all that, and everything works fairly well. It does. The game's actually pretty generous with like your invincibility frames when you're dodging through attacks and stuff, so that's nice. But just in general, it just feels like a lot of the enemies that they have placed in there, it's like they equate like, okay, the game's difficult, add more enemies. Like the enemy placement in the map it's like right outside of the line of cheeky, and like bordering that line between like cheeky to like, okay, this is obnoxious.
So I think on a graph of like the extreme of it being like really annoying with the enemy placement is like a Dark Souls 2, because there's a lot of areas. There's some areas in the main game, but especially on some of the DLCs where it's like, dude, like, what do you expect me to do here? Do you really think that that's supposed to be fun? And it's just like, it's ridiculous, like what they throw at you. And I think that's like an extreme. This game in terms of enemy placement, I don't think ever really crosses and gets to that point.
No.
But dude, it gets like cheek to cheek with it in certain areas where like you and I were playing it, and we ended up getting to a point where we just kind of started running past stuff, because I'm like, I could fight through all these guys, but like at a certain point, because they don't really throw new enemies at you at a certain point.
Yes.
And so you're just dealing with more of all of the same enemies that you've been dealing with. Or, like, when you're in the Umbra, like, there's these little, like little zombie... No, like, I'm talking... There's, like, these little, like, zombie guys, like, just... It's like Umbra enemy, like, one.
It's like the withered.
Yeah, like the normal guys that are just everywhere in the Umbra. And, like, there's certain areas where, like, you can tell they kind of reskin it, and they're like, well, you're in the swamp, so like there'd be like corpses that are like this and that, but it's just that you're fighting against. So you do like the same little like walk around, and then you just kill them. And so at a certain,
pile a whole bunch of them on.
Yeah, and then so at a certain point, they're just kind of like they're just throwing more and more of these enemies at you, and then they just reskin some of them, and then there's also like, especially once we're heading to like the Spurned Progeny, like. There's areas where they just throw like bosses at you.
Yes.
Like there's this like Fire Witch kind of boss that we fought against, and then a little bit later I just ran into her in the middle of a street. And the same thing with like the Ruined. He's like a
the Ruiner.
The Ruiner, whatever. Yeah. He's like big, bulky dude. Charges at you, has fire. And then when we're walking through some castle or whatever, there's just like one of those in there too. Yeah. And so they do a lot of that kind of stuff. And like it, I'm not gonna really like knock them for that in particular because like that's kind of like a thing you can do in these games when you're making them, but. It's more than anything like they're choosing to do that, and then the normal enemies. There's not really a lot of new enemies the more you keep going, and then they just throw more and more and more and more at you, and then there's certain puzzles where like you need to like use your umbral lamp to grab onto something and then yank it, and you need to lock onto the thing to do that, which was like I think is just it's just obnoxious.
That brings us to the lock-on too.
Okay, the lock-on. We'll come back to that one in a second, but like little teaser, the lock-on just feels wrong. It just doesn't feel right.
It's like the distance is too far, and it's not like centered. It almost feels like.
Yeah, and the way your character moves around a locked like enemy is like I need to like spend more time with it to like be specific about it, but it just doesn't feel right. But needless to say, you'll be fighting all these enemies, whatever, and then you run into something like that you need an umbral lamp. And this is one of my bigger complaints, I think, than even, like, having to lock onto the thing to pull it. Is, like, I use my lamp and I, like, shine on it and I'm like, oh, the thing's here. But when I'm in the land of the living or whatever, the world of the living, realm of the living, whatever you want to call it, when I'm not in Umbra, like, I have to tear into Umbra in order to even pull that. When I'm like, dude, like, I'm looking at it right now. Like, I can't lock into it and then, like, grab it through. And so you have to go into the Umbra to like pull those things. But if you remember, like I said a second ago, you've got all these enemies following you. So when you're just kind of running and doing your thing, and then you're trying to pull that, and then you have to pull yourself into the Umbra, now you're dealing with like a whole litany of other enemies that are in the Umbra on top of all the ones that were in the land of the living. And it's just like, it's like, I forget who it was on like Reddit that was saying like, dude, the game like really thinks difficulty spikes are just like throwing more trash mobs at you, and that's really all they do. It's like it's just more and more and more and more enemies of the same ones you fought.
And like it was a little unfortunate to me at least because its strength was the world design and the art and just kind of seeing all these little crevices of these places that you're going to, and it like de-incentivized me to do that because there were so many of these mobs and they're not particularly difficult to deal with. It's just that when you have like no joke, like tens of guys following you and they follow you far.
Yeah.
They'll follow you for a long time. It's
really far, dude.
It's like, okay, you're because this is what would happen is like, I'd hit a spot or whatever and I'm like in a new area and I'm like, okay, let me kill everyone as I go. Let me find the items. Let me explore, see if there's any shortcuts. Then you get a little further down the line and you're like, okay, kill some more guys, whatever, heal up a little, keep going. And then eventually you like get ganked to somewhere down the line. And this is away from one of they call them, what do you call it? Vestige points. It's like your bonfire or like your checkpoints. And you get kind of far away from that and then you end up like dying all the way down over there. And you're like, okay, well, let me go and like get my vigor back. Okay, but like I want to go and like explore some more. You find that hilarious, don't you?
Because I just want to say that joke, dude.
I never knew her. So you're like, all right, well let me go through again, and then you kill the guys again, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna have more. This is great. I'm still exploring. I need to explore that area over there, and then you go and you reclaim that, and then you go a little further, and then you die again, and you're like, okay, I got to go through all of that again. And you're like, let me just run through it. And then you don't realize that, like, okay, I've been spending, like, 30 minutes in this area already. And, like, I've got all these guys following me. And there's always, like, that, like, one little guy that would, like do a little spin attack and jump at you or something. And you're like, well, he got me. And so it's not, like, it's not new to this franchise. No. Like, this is stuff that we've dealt with before.
Well, this genre.
This genre, yeah. Thank you for the correction. It's not the franchise. It's, like, the genre in general where... This is something that we have.
Standard.
It's standard, but this is like, to your point of like Dark Souls 2. It's like it's on the way, if not like almost there, where you're like, okay, this enemy placement, the amount of enemies I'm dealing with, it's not fun anymore. it's not that it's not doable. It's completely doable. Okay, it's not that I can't get past it. I mean, we were able to get past all the areas that we went to, but it's like now I'm losing like the steam to continue going on. It's not as rewarding anymore because now it's like it feels like a nuisance that I just finished, as opposed to, oh wow, I actually made it through all of that. You know, and like From Software games have had this problem before too, but like it's, I was hoping that like they would have learned from those mistakes, but instead it kind of seems like, and it seems like that in the interviews and stuff too, where like, yeah, they, very ambitious team, you know, Hexworks and CI Games, like very ambitious, but there's certain moments.
They need to rein in that ambition, I feel.
I don't like it when they make these games, any developer, and their only goal is difficulty, because then I think you can find yourself in weird spots where it's actually not fun.
Yes.
You know?
And I think that leads to, like... So... I think a big thing people don't realize about these Soulsborne games is that it's not what you're doing that makes the game difficult. It's the gameplay loop that is created with these mechanics and how these mechanics work together that's very unforgiving. Okay, and so it's not necessarily that the game is hard, it's just that, like, you've got to, like, kind of keep your hand on the steering wheel, like, the whole time and watch your turns, so to speak. Because, like, if you miss one, like, you're gonna crash, and, like, it's not gonna give you a chance back. Like, they're very unforgiving games, but it's not necessarily that they're just, like, hard. You know, and so I think when a lot of new developers come in to, like, make a Soulsborne game and their only goal is to make it hard, because they're like, these games are hard, it's like they end up, like, giving a boss, like, super huge freaking, like, health pools, or they give it these, like, really ridiculous attacks that are like, what do you expect me to do here? Or they make the boss, like, ultra aggressive, or they do, like, a mix of a few of these things, and it's like, go play, like, Demon Souls before you make this game. Go play, like, okay, because they're the ones that, like, created the genre, okay, and they're still the only people that are, like, understand how it works, so go study them. Because what you will realize is when you go play, like, Demon Souls or Dark Souls 1, those games, by the construct of the kind of gameplay that these games are in this genre is, like, they're not that hard. They're actually pretty easy. Okay, compared to, like, a Dark Souls 2 or 3 or Sekiro or freaking Bloodborne. Like, Bloodborne's, like, one of the hardest ones you could play. You know? And when you go back to those first games, like, they're not that difficult once you're playing by the rules. Because that's the thing, is, like, these games, what make them difficult is, like, the rules that they, like, require you to play by. You know? It's not that it's, like, a suggestion. It's like, no, you need to count your hits. No, you need to learn this enemy and, like, know once the combo's done of that enemy, now you've got a pocket. So what do you want to do? Do you want to heal or do you want to attack? And if you attack, you're going to still work within this, like, rubric of this, like, enemy that you're fighting or whatever. And it's very, like, specific, you know? But a lot of these people will go in and they're like, oh, okay, so I just need to have a dodge. I need to have, like, a currency that you lose when you die. I need to like, make the bosses really hard. I need to, have a bonfire for a checkpoint. You need to heal and respawn all the enemies on the bonfire. And I'm like, that's, like, surface level what you see. Like, when you look at Dark Souls, Demon Souls, any of these games, like, those are the surface level aspects of what make them what they are.
Yeah.
But it's, like, stuff like, and you were mentioning it earlier, like, the movement in the game, like, and I noticed, because I actually went back to Dark Souls after we finished playing this, because, like, honestly, I was just, like, I felt so hungry for, like, a Soulsborne done right, so I just went to, like, Dark Souls 1, because I actually haven't beaten that one yet. It's, like, the only one I haven't beaten. But I went back to that one, and man, that game feels so good, dude, in comparison. It's, like, it's got intrigue, it's got, you know, it's got drive, it's got, like, inspiration, dude. Like, the game is, like, there's a lot of different factors that just drive you to want to keep going and want to keep, like, figuring things out. And, like, unfortunately, Lords of the Fallen didn't really have that, you know. But in terms of movement, I noticed Dark Souls is kind of similar, but they, like, slowed it down even more. Where we noticed in Lords of the Fallen, like, I think to start, like, if you're playing, like, most of these Soulsborne games and you're facing one way, and then you just click the other way, your guy doesn't have really an animation of turning around. He just kind of like starts facing that way. It's like they'll just face the cardinal direction, and that kind of adds to like the control and feel of things. I wonder if it affects even like how you move around on the lock-on. I bet you it does too. But it'll be either like that, like 0 frame like turn, or it'll be like a 2 frame like just like you quickly like spin around, and it's like that in Dark Souls 1. In this game, if I turn around, my guy there's like a kind of like a little, it's like maybe like a second and a half where like he turns around, and like it just doesn't feel right. And it also adds to like when you're just kind of like, if you're like in an elevator and you're just kind of like fiddling the stick, you're just like messing with the thumbstick, like your guy can start looking like ridiculous, dude, with how he moves. And that's more just kind of funny than like it actually being a critique. But yeah, there's a lot of things about it where it's like there's to go into the Soulsborne genre and just like make a game, like there's a ton of nuance underneath the surface level things, like I mentioned, of like bonfire and it being punishing and this and that. Like there's a lot of nuance to it, you know. And like even in boss design, like FromSoft, when there's bosses and there's attacks that seemingly anywhere you dodge, there's no way out. Like you start to realize there's kind of like rules to it, where it's like if someone's swinging at you, you usually want to dodge into the swing, you know. Or like I think a good example is like the Dancer from Dark Souls 3, Dancer the Boreal, whatever. Like she has this grab where she grabs with her right hand, and literally anywhere you dodge, you'll get grabbed because they like purposefully make the hitbox kind of like stupid huge. And the only way you can dodge out of it is like by perfectly timing like a dodge into her hand. I believe it was into her hand. I can't remember, but there's like one direction. I can't remember the direction, but there's only one direction that you can really like dodge out of that from. And so there's like things like that when you look at like how FromSoft does it, they're funneling you to like do this dance, you know, like, and I'm not the first one to mention this. There's a lot of people that have like, you know, made the comparison of like Dark Souls and even Soulsborne, or not Soulsborne, even Bloodborne to a degree, but Bloodborne's more of like, it's much more aggressive. A lot of these games, it's like a dance, where it's like you learn the rhythm of the dance, of the song, you know, however you want to put it, and then you're playing your part in this like tango, right? And a lot of people, a lot of developers, when they're making these games, like, I feel don't understand that and miss that, like, completely. And Lords of the Fallen, like, honestly kind of felt like that, too.
Yeah, for me, it's like the bosses were actually pretty good. You know, I think where the game really starts to show is when you're traversing. Like, I think that's, like, probably, like, if I had to pick between the two, I'm like, the bosses actually were decent. You know, there were some of them that were actually really fun. You know, there were some of them that were like, okay, that doesn't feel right. But like as I started to learn, like, okay, like you really want me dodging through, and you know the iframes are pretty generous and all that. I'm like, okay, this is cool. You know, and there were a couple bosses that I really enjoyed fighting. You know, they were fun.
That tree like warrior with the horse.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun.
Spurn
Progeny was fun. I actually enjoyed that.
I really liked the aesthetic on that one.
Yeah,
it's,
like
really
there was that one like optional boss that we fought, the one that you ended up beating him, but it was like the that like guy that had like the
Rectum Percival.
the Percival, yeah, that guy. He was cool. Like I actually did like the bosses, but the world, and to your point of like where you just started running through things, like, man, the amount of enemies that are throwing, I'm like, you know, this is not really enjoyable at all. Like, I'm finding myself just like wanting to run to the next boss, and like that's like half of your game, guys. Like that's more than half your game is all these areas, and then
just want to run by.
Yeah, and then you start encountering, because I would run past things, and I'm like, where's this next vestige point? Because they have this other mechanic where you can like get these little like seedlings, and you can plant in specific predetermined areas, like
umbral flower beds.
These umbral flower beds, you can put like these umbral seeds, you know, vestige seeds, and then you can like spawn like a little like vestige point, like a
little bonfire,
like a little bonfire for yourself, and that you can only do one at a time. So if you have one like earlier on in the game, it's gonna if you put down another one, it's gonna transfer to that new spot, which is, I mean, it's all right. I mean, from what I was reading, the game was actually originally designed to only have one vestige point that was permanent, and that's the one that was in like their hub, and the rest would be these vestige seeds
that you could choose to.
Yeah, and during playtesting, people were like, "That you're taking it too far. This is ridiculous," which is in line with what you and I were experiencing. It's like, if you want to have like a really difficult experience, like that should be like New Game Plus, 2, round 2, 3. That's where it should really start to like feel like, okay, this is like, now it's starting to get like pretty oppressive. Play with some enemy placement if you want to then, but like on the first round, I'm like, you guys weren't even planning on having vestige points, so it's actually New Game Plus where they fulfilled that vision, which I'm fine with that. I mean, like that is what it is, like, but it does show in the game design
choice.
Well, it shows in the game design, like when you're playing it, where you're like, where's this next vestige point? And like you'll find like a little flower bed, and it's happened to us. We're like, just plant a seat there. Like I don't want to do this. I don't have to do that run all the way through, and then you find like a vestige point like a couple seconds away from that. Or another example like that like forest guy that was like on the horse, like you kill him, you like cleanse the beacon, or you don't, depending on what ending you want, but
you don't have to cleanse those.
You don't have to cleanse those.
That's
so
simple.
You do that whole bit, and then there's like a flower bed that like opens up like in the middle of the arena, and you're like, oh, I can plant a vestige seed here. Or you could just walk like 6 seconds out of there, 10 seconds out of there, and then find one that's a little bit down the road, and not waste your seed. And you're like, this is
some of the placements of like those flower beds to like the vestige point actual like they're kind of like, it felt like they're just kind of haphazardly like thrown around. Yeah. Like on the path where they're like, this makes sense, this looks like a spot, and then like a little further they're like, but this is such a nice room to put a flower bed, and they're like, we'll just put one here too.
Or like even like the umbral areas too, it's like really cool design, really cool visuals, but there's this mechanic where like the longer you're in the umbral world, like the more aware of your presence the inhabitants become, and so after like a period of time, like it starts increasing the amount of these like withered like little enemies.
Yeah, they start spawning.
And they start spawning like crazy. And dude, like, if you find yourself stuck in that for too long, you've got like a whole mess of things following you. And like at that point, you're not gonna like stop and like try to figure out how to like crowd control all these guys, and like you're like, no, I need to get out of Umbral, which is it's admittedly it is kind of a rush at times. But it's also more than it being, like, fun and, like, exhilarating. It's, like, again, just it feels obnoxious. So I'm like, because there's certain enemies, like, in that Umbral world that I'm like...
Or honestly, so annoying.
I'm like, why is this in here? Like, that, like, flying thing that, like, spits out other, like, withered, and then, like...
And then it'll grab you.
Like, out of nowhere.
It'll
like,
freaking TKO you, dude.
Yeah, like, you'll be, like, trying to, like, deal with, like, one or two guys to, like, run through a passage, and then she grabs you, and then she's, like, spitting on you,
and the thing, too,
like,
is when it gets that crazy, too, you'll get in your head, you're like, I need to get to a vestige point. And sometimes you'll get to the vestige point, and it won't let you go on there, because it's like, oh, enemies got it.
Enemies right here,
And you're like...
Another one I want to mention, okay? And I understand these games, people are like... It's fun. Oh, when it happens, it's exciting and like it scares you. But like the whole mimic mechanic in this game, like normally, like for those of you who don't know, like a mimic is like you go like open up a chest, and the chest is like it's a mimic.
Oh my gosh!
Where it's like a treasure chest that's gonna like it's an enemy. You can like fight it. It'll do some damage or whatever. You're like, oh goodness, like okay, don't open up that treasure chest.
You learn the chains.
So in this game, when you pick up items, it's like a little glowing orangish yellow. It's like a golden, like, little, like...
That's what all the items look like.
All the items look the same. And you go and you pick it up. Well, about, like, a third of the way through the game, they introduce this, like, mimic, like, their version of a mimic, where it's, like, just an item sitting on the ground. And when you pick it up, like, some creature from the Umbral... like grabs you and like starts chaunching on you and like eating you, and then like you're instantly like dead. And now you're like in umbral state because like in the game when you're in the land of the living and you die, you lose all your health. Then you're in umbral and you're in the land of the dead and you have like one extra chance. And he like instantly jets you into like umbral all the time that happens.
If you're in umbral, you still can't see him.
You still can't see him,
And
and
if
then
you
he
pick
just
up
kills
that
you.
item, he just kills you.
Yeah, and it can be really frustrating because sometimes like there's
I don't think you can kill those things either.
no, you can't.
They're just like,
and here's the other one.
you just don't get those items.
No, you don't. And here's the part that like really, and correct me if I'm wrong, put in the comments or something. But like what I observed is that the placement of that item will move, so it's not the same place every time. Like there's times where like he was a little bit down the line, so I'm like, okay, so like this flies in the face of like, in my opinion, was good game design, because good game design, there's a level of predictability that's important in order to simulate the fairness, where the player is all like, no, that felt fair, I shouldn't have done that.
I think a good example is like
Yeah.
Dark Souls. You get a mimic, it kills you immediately. It'll keep chaunching till you die, right?
But now you know.
Now you know that one's there, and so you go and you just swipe your sword at the chest. Then it reveals itself. You kill the mimic, you get the item. Boom, you're done.
Yeah.
Like this one, it's like I don't.
You can't kill them.
Let me put it this way: if you can kill those things, like, dude, they do not make it clear, like, at all. Okay, and it's like, oh, what do you mean clear? I'm like, look at the example I just gave. Like, the chest is that chest is a mimic chest in Dark Souls. I die to it once. You fooled me once. You're not gonna fool me twice. I'm gonna go swipe at it, right?
Right.
And boom, now I know I can kill it. Like in this game, like I tried like looking around with the umbral like lamp. I didn't see it anywhere. They literally like poof into existence from nowhere and then just kill you. And like, to me, it didn't seem like there's any way to kill it. If there's a way to kill it, like I don't think they make it clear enough. You know.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the whole one permanent vestige point, and I was remembering. I think Dark Souls 1 was supposed to be like that. Where they wanted you to go around and, like, make your bonfires. And even they decided against that, because they're like, this isn't clear enough, and this is, like, kind of obnoxious. And, like, what if someone doesn't find this spot of, like the bonfires, like, you see them. You know, you'll go into a room and you see it. You're like, oh, dude, there's a sword, I can do a bonfire, and you make a bonfire. You know, if that wasn't there, it's just, like, a little... like it is in this game, where it's like a little flower bed. Like, dude, like, I don't know how long it took me to like realize. I'm like, oh, these flowers are where I can like plant this, because it just seemed kind of arbitrary at first. Granted, I joined in a little later, and so I don't know if they like shoot a tooltip for that or anything.
He did.
But yeah, like I think there's a lot of stuff where it's like, you know, a lot of devs that are trying to make like Soulsborns, they're trying to like, on their first game, make it harder than something that like FromSoft can do. And I'm like, dude, it's taken them years to be able to make stuff that's like feels fair and as hard as it is.
Yeah, they've ramped up.
They've ramped up like over the years. Like it's these are not easy games to make. Again, like there's a lot of nuance.
And I think if the goal is like, let's make a difficult game,
you're missing the point.
I think I think that's the wrong approach. I don't think it's a very fruitful approach.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and like...
But Miyazaki said that. He's like, we're not trying to make difficult games. He goes, like, we're not trying to make it this super difficult thing. He goes, like, there's an inherent challenge in the games, you know, but that's more in service of the other design goals that we have in mind, not necessarily the design goal.
Yeah, of like making you feel like you kill a dragon and it's like, I killed a dragon.
You feel empowered.
Yeah, you feel empowered, but it's like, to do that, the game's going to end up being kind of hard, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like there's a level of things where devs that are trying to get into this genre will miss. They'll either try to make it way too hard on like their first game, and I'm like, dude, you're better off. Which is also why I like what NeoWiz is doing with their updates on Lies of P. I'm like, good, make it a little easier so you can suss out what worked and what didn't. Because if the game's just like way too hard, like a lot of people aren't even gonna finish it. And then now you don't have, like, extra eyes on, like, other parts of the game, you know? But I feel like they'll either try to make it way too hard, or they'll try to, like, innovate all these different new things in there, and, like, they never question, like, do you think, like, FromSoft thought about this? And, like, if they didn't do it, why did they not do it? Because it's, like, even, like, this one, like, the Vestige having 1 point and stuff, I'm like, that I wouldn't be shocked if they got from FromSoft like not doing it and being like, that would be cool, like let's do that. And I'm like, but did you look into why they didn't do it? You know, because there's reasons why they don't do certain things, you know. And I think it just goes in like, yeah, check that one up if that's what you're doing, because I'm pretty sure it was one of their games. I'm pretty sure it was Dark Souls 1, where they wanted you to like make your bonfires. But yeah, like it's not an easy genre to get into and like do it right. I think that's also why Lies of P is such an accomplishment, you know, because like they actually did it, got in there and did really well. This game's really cool with aesthetic and all of that. You know, music's kind of the same like the first game. Progression and stuff like that, you know, it works pretty similarly to like all these FromSoft games, all these Soulsborns. You know, you dump into like strength or whatever, and then that minimizes.
So, Lords of the Fallen spent 4 years in development. Fully remote studio. Okay, there is a total of 400 plus developers, of which 90 were internal.
What?
Yeah, so there's 400 plus developers that worked on the game, and 90 of them
were like actually
their actual like in-house devs.
And so they contracted a lot.
So they did a lot of contracting. I think that kind of makes a lot of sense, considering, because there's a lot of parts that seem like it almost felt like there's a different mind behind that section of the game.
Yeah, and like even if it's like all in-house devs, but you're working like remotely, it's like, how are you gonna direct that? Like you gotta like, that's really hard.
A lot of like ad hoc kind of conversations you would have around the office are just not gonna occur. Yeah, you know, because you're like on Slack or you're this. So that could be considered. Like, I think they did a really great job. I would like to personally
see another one.
I would give them another go.
Give them one more try.
Give them one more try. Let's see what you guys can do. Let's see what you can do with the feedback. But overall, you know, to kind of wrap up and I guess surmise our thoughts, you know, we'll give like our recommendation. You know, I think if it sounds interesting, like what we've talked about, you know, if the art design is interesting to you, you know, if you're willing to put up with some of the difficulties of it, like check it out. Like me personally, I'm not going to finish the game. Like I've gotten my fill of it. I've spent like a good 30 hours in it. You know, I'm good. You know, I'm actually going to go back to Lies of P, personally.
Yeah.
You know, and spend more time
I've already gone back to Dark Souls.
Yeah, so I think, like, if this is, like, right up your alley, if what we're talking about, like, sounds interesting, like, yeah, like, give it a try, check it out, you know, maybe wait for sale, you know, up to you.
I think definitely wait for sale.
But this isn't, like a must-play, in my opinion.
No, not at all.
Like, what's your take? Like,
I think the game has some cool stuff to look at. And I think that the gameplay services that for a little while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a must play. I think anybody would enjoy it a lot more if you waited for sale.
Yeah.
Because if you dumped the $70 on it, it was 70, right?
Yeah.
Okay, like you dump the $70 on it, like it's because it's gonna play into your experience. Because it's I don't think the game's worth $70 because that's not what I'm getting at. It's just it's got some problems. You know, it's got some growing up to do. You know, and real quick, like to the point of the permanent vestige, because I actually looked it up. It was Dark Souls 3 that was supposed to have that mechanic. Because I remember it was one of the Dark Souls. Yeah, Dark Souls 3 is supposed to have a mechanic where you like make your bonfires. So just to clear that one up real quick.
Cool. All right, so you got two, you know, wait for sales, you know, check it out. Maybe if you're interested in it. That's our takes here.
That's the take.
That's the take.
That's the take.
Lords of the Fallen, you know.
We'll give you 2 wait for sales.
But yeah, that being said, you know, we'll wrap up here. You know, talk a little bit about what we've been up to, you know, and close out.
Yeah.
What you been up to? What you been doing?
I beat Final Fantasy VI. I beat it. I'm proud. I did it.
What'd you think?
I know.
What'd you think?
It's definitely a dated game, but it's you know it's a classic. It's good. You know.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's got a cool story, cool characters. Did make me tear up a few times.
I teared up at the Ocarina Media, but I teared up with the opera scene. That's
Yeah.
the singing and stuff.
Yeah,
It's like, oh my God.
yeah, dude. Yeah, it's a classic for a reason. You know, I think that's the biggest thing I can say. It's also really interesting playing that one and then seeing like Final Fantasy VII because it's like a gigantic step up, dude, in terms of just like the realization of it all. And then I've been playing Dark Souls and went back to that.
Nice.
So yeah, it's been tight.
It's good stuff.
I'm also playing Danganronpa too. That's like that's
And
my
we're going to go to the gym today.
and we're gonna go to the gym.
Yeah, so that's what I'm up to. I'm going to be going to the gym, getting my pump on. So that's exciting. Apart from that, I've been getting back to doing a lot more drawing. You know, that's been feeling really good. Actually, I've been really enjoying that. And then just reading. You know, I finished The Ego Is My Enemy, or The Enemy, Ryan Holiday. Great book. Highly recommend.
He's the Daily Stoic, right?
Daily Stoic, yes. Really good book. A lot of cool insight. A lot of good historical information. You know, people who let the egos get to them.
Like, there's a lot of quotes from Marcus Aurelius.
A lot of Aurelian quotes. A lot of Epictetus. You know,
Is that Epictetus or Titus?
I've heard both ways. Yeah, they're both very interesting fellows. And then just gonna be getting back to reading that Hero of Ages. Want to finish off that Era 1 of Mistborn.
Yeah, I need to finish that.
Yeah,
too.
but anyway, that's been your 2 souls for today. We'll be swinging on in next week for episode 3. But until then, check us out on our social
I
media.
just got what you did there.
So check us out on our socials.
Yes.
At 2 Souls
At 2 Souls.
Podcast.
I'm going to put the social notes up, I think.
You should see it like around here somewhere.
Yeah.
We've had a wonderful time. A wonderful time.
Again, at 2 Souls on all socials. Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah.
If you do really like it, then click that notification bell as well.
Hey, if you want, if you think other people will like it, if you don't think they will, just hit the little share button. It's good stuff.
Just send it to your entire family. Start a group text.
Yeah, start from the oldest down to the youngest. So send it to great grandma, then send it to grandma, all the way down to your nephew that was just
If you got an
just recently weaned.
If you got an estranged family, this is a good way to get back in touch.
Honestly, yeah, it's good.
It's a random freaking podcast.
All right.